Welcome back to Feel for the Game. A little bit of an off the cuff video today. I just happened to be up here where we record and was thinking about March Madness, and I thought, might as well put my bracket out there. So that's what I'm going to be doing. No video of us today, unfortunately, and it's just going to be me in this one. We actually record at one of the places that I work, and it's my lunch break. So I figured I would just record this real quick and then get back to work after. But it is Wednesday. The round of 64 will start tomorrow. We have two more play-in games to get through. We had two yesterday between Howard and UMBC, where Howard beat them, fighting off a late rally, and then same thing with Texas and NC State. Texas beating them. So tonight we have Prairie View A&M and Lehigh, and a play-in game between two 16s. Two of the weaker teams in the field, two of the weaker conferences in college basketball. So I don't really have a great feel on this one. I will be honest, I haven't watched a lot of Prairie View A&M and Lehigh this year, but I feel like the Patriot is a tiny bit better than the SWAC, so I'll go with Lehigh in this one. And also, excuse my voice. Pollen has hit very hard, and I'm very allergic to pollen, so not going to have the best sounding voice for this one. But game two, the game that is getting the overwhelming majority of attention tonight, is Miami, Ohio against SMU. I believe SMU is favored by 7.5 in this game. I'm actually going to check on that real fast for us. Yeah, SMU is favored by 7.5. They've been solid at times this year, but kind of bipolar. That's how most of these teams in the first four are. But not the case for Miami, Ohio, obviously. 31-1, or one loss just coming in the conference, the MAC conference tournament. I believe they have 13 one-score wins. They're like 13-0 in one-score games or something, which is crazy. So I'm actually going to go with the Red Hawks to win this one here. I feel like everybody's kind of off them since that loss, talking about the weak strength of schedule, but this is a team that just knows how to win games. And that has been a struggle for SMU down the stretch, just to finish in some games. So I like Miami, Ohio to win this one. So now we can move into the main field. I'm going to be a little bit slower and more detailed with the round of 64 games, but then once we get into the round of 32 and beyond, I'm going to go a little faster because at that point it's just hypothetical games. So I'm not going to waste a bunch of your time talking about games that aren't guaranteed to happen, and many of them will not happen. So first game in here from the East region, Duke versus Siena. Duke a little banged up, but not much to say about this one here. Duke easily wins that one. Ohio State versus TCU in the 8 versus 9. For TCU, it's crazy that they're even in this position after their first game of the year going down to New Orleans. I mean, just a terrible loss there. Ohio State's been a solid team all year. They're favored by 2.5 points, I believe. Got some good guard play, and I think they win this game. Now moving on to St. John's versus Northern Iowa. This is a 5v12. I feel like Northern Iowa is overseeded and St. John's is underseeded. Northern Iowa finished sixth in the Missouri Valley, but ended up winning the conference tournament. Seems a little high to have them as a 12, and then St. John's winning the Big East tournament. Seems a little low to have them at 5. So for me, this profile is more like a 4v13, and I like the Johnnies to win this one with relative ease. Next game up, Kansas versus Cal Baptist. I'm going to take Kansas in this one, but watch out. Watch out. The whole Darren Peterson stuff has just been weird for the Jayhawks. And that's something to watch during this tournament. But my main thing about this game is that nobody's talking about it at all. This is like on nobody's radar as an upset, really. And those are the kind of games that you have to look out for. Last year, Duquesne knocked off BYU in the 5-12, and that was like the least likely 5-12 upset, according to me. And it happened. So some of these games that are slept on, end up being the ones that are upset. So just look out for one here. I don't think it's going to happen, but it could. Next up, the most popular upset pick by far: South Florida versus Louisville. Louisville without Michael Brown has not been quite the same caliber as they were before. USF really hot team, really good on offense. The defense has come along as the years went on, and yeah, I know it's the popular pick, and sometimes that will scare you away. I've been scared away from many popular picks, but this one is not popular for no reason. I like the Bulls to win against Louisville here. Then we got Michigan State versus North Dakota State. North Dakota State a really good year out of the Summit League, 27-7, and of course Oral Roberts several years ago made the tournament in back-to-back years. Made it to I think it was the Elite Eight, might have been the Sweet 16, but yeah, it was the Elite Eight. They were out of the Summit. Michigan State's had a good year. This is one to keep an eye on as well. I don't think it happens. I think Michigan State wins and take care of business, but if there's going to be a 14 versus 3, this could be the one. So just keep an eye on it. North Dakota State has a good team. Now we got UCLA versus UCF. That is the 7 versus the 10. UCF a team with some head scratching losses, but some great wins throughout the year. But the metrics do not like them very much. And then UCLA has been a solid club all year, but they have a couple injuries. Donovan Dent and there's another guy, I'm pretty sure. But they are expected to play. That's like the general consensus for most people. If they do play and play to the same level that they would when they are healthy, so if they are healthy playing, then I probably like UCLA, but I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure. So I'm going to go with the Knights. I feel like this is a game to where everyone is picking UCLA here. And a lot of people have them beating UConn in the next round, but I'm going to take the Knights. I think they get it done. Probably fall in the next round to UConn, but I think they find a way here. UConn versus Furman. A lot of people feeling sketchy about UConn after some bad losses recently, getting blown out by St. John's, and then I believe it was Marquette beat them. Marquette, horrible team this year. I think they were like 9 games under 500 or something, just really bad. The interesting losses here for the Huskies this year, recently especially. But I like them to beat Furman here. Furman's a team. Double digit losses out of the SoCon. Trying to remember who was like actually the 1 seed out there in their tournament. I know it wasn't Furman. Let me check on that for us real quick. And it was ETSU and they had 11 losses too. I mean, overall for Southern Conference, it's kind of a down year. There wasn't really one team that just dominated. So I don't think Furman has a great chance. And the Huskies roll in this game. I'm fairly confident. Moving on to the South region, Florida plays the winner of Prairie View, A&M, and Lehigh. Doesn't matter who wins that game. Florida will win. No way they lose. 2-16. Next round though, maybe they could. So moving on, Clemson against Iowa in the 8 versus 9. I feel like this one should be reversed with the seeds. To be honest, I feel like Iowa's just a better team than Clemson. Now they play in the tougher conference. Big Ten has been really good this year. ACC's been kind of meh. So I'm going to go with the Hawkeyes, more battle tested. They have had some interesting losses, to say the least, but most teams have at this point in the season. So I'm going to stick with the Hawkeyes. Moving down to Vanderbilt versus McNeese. This is another 5 versus 12. McNeese last year, I believe, was in a 5-12 as well. Maybe it was a 6-11, but they beat Clemson and then lost. In the next round, I don't think they win the game this year. I like Vanderbilt to get it done here. Too much offense from Vandy, and I like them to cruise in this one. Probably winning this one by 10 plus. Then we got Nebraska versus Troy in 4 versus 13. Nebraska's never won a tournament game in their history, ever. But I think they get it done here. A little bit of a down year for the Sun Belt. I believe pretty much all their teams had double digit losses at the end of it. Troy, it's like 22 and 11, something in that range. It's more rare for those teams to win games, especially when they're these higher seeds like this. It just kind of shows you that most of the AQ field is down a little bit. So I like Nebraska to take care of business. Could it be sketchy? For sure, though, because Nebraska's never won a game. So watch that one, but I think they'll win. VCU taking on North Carolina. That is, North Carolina is the 6th, VCU is the 11th. North Carolina has not been the same since Caleb Wilson got injured. And this VCU team has been one of, if not the hottest team in the nation. They've won 16 of their last 17 games. This is probably the second most popular upset pick, and I like it. I'm going with it. I think the Rams get it done here against the Tar Heels. Then we got Illinois taking on Penn. TJ Power for Penn had just an unreal championship game against Yale. I believe he ended up putting up 44 or 46 points. Went crazy. Had a buzzer beater to force overtime in that game where they eventually beat Yale. But I think their luck runs out against Illinois. Illinois, very good team, elite offense. I think they get it done pretty easily here against Penn. Then we got St. Mary's against Texas A&M. Very contrasting styles here. St. Mary's one of the slowest tempo teams in the nation, and obviously everybody knows about Buckyball over there at A&M and how insane that is. So with this one, I am going to be trusting St. Mary's to get it done. A&M was or had a very good start to the year, but they really did it off the back of playing nobody. And then once they played competition, it quickly went downhill, almost getting down to range where they could miss the tourney at a 10 seed down here. St. Mary's always a good, consistent team. I'm going to take the consistency over the questions here in this game. So St. Mary's moving on. And then this game definitely a lot of consistency in it. Houston taking on Idaho. I don't think Houston's ever going to be upset in the first round, being a high seed. Idaho had a good run, but Houston's probably going to hold you to 42 points. So that'll do it for the South bracket. I do need to take a quick break here just to get a swig of something to drink because my voice is drying up very quick. All right, moving on to the West. Arizona taking on Long Island on versus 16. Long Island probably the best 16 seed, but who cares? Arizona by a million. Then we got Villanova versus Utah State on the 8 versus 9. Nobody is really thinking Villanova can win this game. And I'm in the same camp as well. I like Utah State. Champions of the Mountain West. Been very hot recently. Mountain West has been a little down this year, but the Big East has been really down. Outside of this Villanova team and St. John's and UConn, no tournament, no tournament teams. Just a really rough year for the Big East. So neither of these teams have played the greatest schedules ever, but I do like Utah State to advance here. Wisconsin versus High Point. I was all on the High Point hype train last year, and they ended up falling short against Purdue. They do jump up a seed line this year to 12, but Wisconsin's been very hot. High Point in some of their bigger non-conference games did not perform the greatest. I know they're 30-4, so you sit there and you're like, well, how they not perform well? They went like 11-3 in the non-conference. Their non-conference was not very difficult. In the tougher games, they lost. So I'm gonna stick with Wisconsin here, not taking that bait again. I love the High Point story. It's a fun team to watch. They have a really cool gym and all that. But I'm sticking with Wisconsin. I'm not going to get bit by the same team. There's my phone going off with a reminder with the duck sound. I was just talking about not getting bit by the same team, but every year VCU makes it, I pick them to win, and they never win. So maybe that'll change. Hopefully that'll change. But I mean, I've been bit by them a million times, but that's a really popular pick. So I had to go with that. But anyways, back on track. Wisconsin to beat High Point. Arkansas plays Hawaii. This is one that is getting zero talk at all. You'll hear about Arkansas versus Wisconsin a million times before you hear about Arkansas versus Hawaii. And as I said earlier, these are the games to keep an eye on for possible upsets. I don't think it happens here. I like Arkansas. Akuf is for Acuff. So good. So good. He's going to be really fun to watch this March. Unless it just ends after this one game. But I don't think it will. Hawaii, a solid squad. Very unique team. Should be a fun watch. I like the Razorbacks, but just keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on it. It would not shock me if Hawaii pulls this one off somehow. Then we got BYU taking on Texas Longhorns. Texas, the winners last night against NC State. And the big news for BYU, well, it's not really news because it's been reality for the past like month or so. Richie Saunders out. I believe he was their second leading scorer behind AJ Dabastanza. So that's a big hit for BYU. They haven't looked quite the same since, but Texas, I don't like them a ton. I mean, they did win a game last night, so that's a positive. But Mississippi State Bulldogs went to Texas and beat them earlier this year, and we were extremely terrible. So this is a Texas team that has some highs and lows. Like I said, how play-in teams are. So they could go out and win this game, or they could get smashed by 20. I'm going to stick with BYU here. I am. I don't think they're going to go very far because of that injury, but I think Dabastanza is enough to get them by Texas here. But would not be surprised at all. I have other brackets where I picked Texas, but in my main bracket, the bracket that I'm sticking with as my picks, I'm taking BYU. Moving on to Gonzaga versus Kennesaw State. This one, not getting a ton of talk, and there's only one reason why I have anything really to say about this game, and that's the fact that Gonzaga lost to Portland earlier this year. I would say Portland is probably worse than Kennesaw State, and Gonzaga's shown that they can lose to a team like that. So it's something to watch. I don't think it happens here. Isn't there? I'm pretty sure there's some like streak of Gonzaga making it to the round of 32 or something, or maybe it's just making it in the tournament. But they had some kind of streak for a while. So if that is the case, I don't see them falling. I mean, I don't see them falling anyways. But that's another one. Just don't overlook it completely. Moving on to the 7 versus 10, Miami. They get on Missouri. Something to note here too. This game is in St. Louis. That is only about an hour and a half drive to Columbia, Missouri. So fair to say this is going to be a very Missouri heavy crowd. More like a home game atmosphere for the Tigers. But I do think Miami wins this one. Barely. Barely, barely, barely. Missouri, kind of a back and forth team. You never really know what you're going to get. This is a team that I really didn't like that much coming into the year. They were proving me right early, but they had some good stretches and got enough wins where they were able to make the tournament. But I do think they fall here. But would not be surprised in the slightest if they're able to win, especially given it's going to be basically a home game. As for Miami, I like them. This was a much needed, solid year for that program down there. And finally, number 2, Purdue versus Queens. Queens, fun story. This is the first year that they were eligible to be in the tournament, and here they are. As for Purdue, really strong start to the year, rough patch in the middle, and then they turn it on and win the Big Ten championship. I was blanking for a second. I like them to win this one pretty easily, but you got to be careful sometimes with these teams that get hot in their conference tournament because sometimes it doesn't carry over, and they end up being the opposite in the NCAA tournament. Like they run out of gas in their conference tournament and have nothing left for the NCAA tournament and lose early. Now, if that's the case for Purdue, I still think they win this game, but that's just something to watch out for them going forward. But I probably need to start talking a little quicker before my voice completely runs out. So we got one more region in the Midwest. I'm gonna take a swig of my tea right here and then finish this out, and then pick the round of 32 and beyond very quickly because we are already at 21 minutes. Michigan versus Howard. Um, Howard with the winners last night over UMBC. Good win. I thought UMBC was going to win, but I mean, not much to say. Michigan will win. Georgia versus St. Louis. Ooh, two of the best offensive teams in the nation. St. Louis, I think like a top five, maybe top two shooting team in the nation, maybe the best. Very, very high up there. This should be an absolute barn burner. Really fun one to watch. I got St. Louis by a little bit. I like to choose teams in March a lot of the time according to their peak during the year. Because a lot of teams will peak and then not play as well maybe for a stretch, but then they get in the tournament and it's that team again that was really good. Um, Number one that comes to mind was UConn a few years ago when they were what were they, a 5 seed and they won it all. There was a stretch in that season where they were just so good and then they just had a rough patch. But then tournament time came and there they were again. So those are the type of teams you got to watch out for. St. Louis was very, very hot. I think they were 24-1 at one point. So I like the Billikens to move on in that one. Texas Tech versus Akron. This is one that a lot of people are picking Akron, man. And I understand that with JT Toppin being injured. There is one other guy. There's a guy that slipped on the court and got injured in the Big 12 tournament. Trying to figure out who that was. Should have been prepared. I believe it was Christian Anderson. If he's not able to go for this one, I like the Zips. But if he is able to go, I like Texas Tech. Right now, I'm assuming that he's going to be able to find a way on the court. So I'm going to barely lean Texas Tech. But if he's not playing, then I like Akron. Moving on down, Alabama versus Hofstra. Alabama going to be without Aiden Holloway because he got arrested for some drug stuff. Just terrible. He's their second leading scorer, and you can't be doing that if you're him. It's just awful. Alabama's play style, though, I feel like makes them upset proof for some of these lower teams. So I think they're still able to win this one. But I think it could be close. I think it could be 10-point game maybe. Tennessee taking on the winner of Miami, Ohio, and SMU. Tennessee is a team that did not like coming into the year, and I don't like them right now. I just I don't think they're great. Their defense is very good, but that's it. Nick Alment is good, but I don't know. Something about this team, I just don't like it very much. I don't. Something to note too that I believe the SEC was very down this year. A lot of these SEC teams are a little bit inflated. Just watching the league and watching State against these teams, it is an absolute miracle that State won 5 conference games in the SEC. If they would have played in last year's SEC, they might have won 2. League this year was just not the same. A lot of old players from a season ago gone. It just wasn't very strong. And so I don't think this Tennessee team is really as good as a six. And I think Miami, Ohio is gonna capture some magic and they're gonna win this game. And shock a lot of people, anger a lot of Tennessee fans, and advance to the round of 32. That's probably my biggest upset that I picked in this bracket. Three more round of 64 games. Virginia taking on Wright State. I like Virginia. They've been a solid squad all year. They just know how to win. Wright State out of the Horizon League. Don't really know a ton about them, but I'm going to go with Virginia. I don't think we get a UMBC or Furman situation this year with the Cavaliers. Kentucky taking on Santa Clara. Really, really interesting matchup this year. Kentucky, probably the most bipolar team ever. They can beat anybody, but they can lose to anybody. Santa Clara, good story. This is their first tournament in like 30 or 40 years or something. Very athletic team, a lot of size. Very good. They made it to the West Coast Conference Championship where they lost to Gonzaga. I like them a lot. I honestly will be rooting for them in this game, but I am going to pick Kentucky. Don't think it matters though, because I have either of those teams that win that game losing to Iowa State, who is going to be taking on Tennessee State, and I think they make pretty easy work of the Tigers and that one. So that is it for the round of 64. Now moving on to the round of 32, where I'm going to go faster because I have to go faster. Duke versus Ohio State. I'm taking Duke in that one, despite the injuries. Then we got St. John's taking on Kansas. I feel like these seeds should be flipped. St. John's should be the 4, Kansas should be the 5. I like the Johnnies. Then we got Michigan State versus South Florida. It was fun for a game, South Florida, but I like Michigan State to move on. Then we got UConn versus UCF. I like the Huskies in that matchup. Then we got Florida versus Iowa. Florida is a team that has just sketched me out all year. Not the best non-conference, but they did get really hot in the SEC. But as I was saying, SEC is just not that good this year. It's not. And then Florida getting blown out and shooting terrible in the SEC semifinals against Vandy. This team just kind of rubs me off bad. And I think that Iowa is going to knock them off in the round of 32. So moving on down, Nebraska taking on Vanderbilt. Everybody's all over Vandy in this game. All over them. But I'm not. Give me the Cornhuskers. I feel like they get that first win over Troy. Takes a lot of the pressure off. Now that their program finally has a March Madness win. And maybe they go on a run after that. We'll have to see. Then we got VCU taking on Illinois. Sorry, VCU. Good upset in the first round, but Illinois advancing in that one. And then we got St. Mary's taking on Houston Cougars. This will be an interesting one. Really slow pace, and St. Mary's against a really good offense in Houston. I mean, not really good offense, really good defense in Houston. I think Houston gets it done with a tenacious defense, moves on. Arizona versus Utah State. I like Arizona in this game. Wisconsin against Arkansas. As I said earlier, this is a game that a million people are talking about, and it's hypothetical. I actually like Wisconsin in this game. SEC, I just don't think it's going to do very good. I'm telling you, they were very down this year, and the Big Ten was not. I think Wisconsin's just a little bit better. Then we got BYU versus Gonzaga. I'm really not a big fan of either of these teams. Really not a big fan of a lot of these teams at the bottom of the West bracket here. But I'm going to go with the Zags to get it done with BYU not having Richie Sounders. And then Purdue taking on Miami. This one could be an upset if it happens, I think. Miami could win this game, but I do like Purdue to get it done. Michigan taking on St. Louis. It was a good win, St. Louis, but Michigan will probably dominate this one. And then we got Texas Tech against Alabama. If Texas Tech is without, what was it, Alexander, I believe. I already lost the tab that I had his name on. We'll just go with that. If they don't have him and they manage to get by Akron, I don't think they beat Bama. But assuming they do have him, and then Bama won't have Holloway, I like Texas Tech to advance. Virginia versus Miami, Ohio. I think the run for Miami, Ohio ends here. I like the Cavaliers. And then Iowa State versus Kentucky. I like Iowa State. Kentucky, too flip floppy of a team. They get their win, but then they lose immediately. Now the Sweet 16. Duke against St. John's. I like Duke in that one. Then we got Michigan State against UConn. A lot of people are saying UConn's a week 2 seed. I don't care. It's tournament time. They're going to perform. I like the Huskies. We got Iowa, Nebraska. Classic football rivalry there. I like the Cornhuskers to win and advance to the Elite Eight. First time they've ever made it past the round of 64, and they get to the Elite Eight. Then we got Illinois versus Houston. Elite offense versus elite defense. Houston always seems to find a way right near the Final Four, usually in the Final Four. And I think this year will not be any exception. So I like the Cougars to beat the Illini. The West bracket, we got Arizona against Wisconsin. Arizona is just too good. They win. Then we got Gonzaga versus Purdue. I know I talked about Purdue maybe running out of steam, but I just like them in the matchup over Gonzaga. I do. I think it sets up really good for Purdue to make it to the Elite Eight. I think Gonzaga is a little bit overrated, but they themselves had a good path to get to this point as well. So Purdue, moving on. Then we got Michigan versus Texas Tech. Given all the injuries on Texas Tech, I like Michigan. If this was a fully healthy Texas Tech team, this wouldn't even be a matchup. Probably they'd probably be like a 3 seed, but much more interesting. But Michigan, I feel like, would take care of business in this matchup. And then we got Iowa State taking on Virginia. I really like the Cyclones this year. I think they get it done against the Cavaliers. Elite Eight, we got Duke and we got UConn, and I'm taking Duke, despite being banged up, as I've said. Then we got Nebraska versus Houston. Sorry, Nebraska, the run ends here, and you probably get dominated. Houston moving on to the Final Four. Then we got Arizona taking on Purdue. As I've said, Arizona is just so good. I think they get by Purdue. And then Michigan versus Iowa State. I really like Iowa State. I do. And I think they finally get into the Final Four. They beat Michigan to get there. Now in the Final Four, Duke against Houston in the semifinals, just like last year. And I think Houston beats them again and makes it to the national championship game for the second year in a row. And then Arizona taking on Iowa State. They just recently played in the Big 12 championship, and Arizona was able to hold. No, Arizona played Houston. I think Arizona played Iowa State in the Big 12 tournament though, and maybe beat them by one or something. Let me look at that real quick. Don't want to be saying false stuff here. Taking me forever to get to this. Yeah, they beat them 82-80. I believe they had a bucket with like 2 seconds left or something. But I think the Wildcats win again and get to the national championship game in Indianapolis, where they beat Houston. Houston heartbreak for the second year in a row in the title game would just be agonizing, wouldn't it? But that's my prediction. I think it's all Big 12 title, and Arizona gets it done. So that will do it for my bracket. Hopefully, it'll be among the best. This was a fun little video, very different video. It's what we're used to. I know I made some of those, some basketball videos, earlier in the season, but I didn't really end up sticking with that. Just didn't really have time for that. But when it's March Madness season and I had this platform, I had to get my picks out there. So expect a video again soon, but for us to be going back to our regularly scheduled football content. Thanks for watching. See y'all later.